Hello, Dental A Team listeners. We are back again. I kept Britt today. If you've listened to the other one, that it was a beautiful Friday morning. It's still a beautiful Friday morning. I made her stick around so I could do even more with her today on this podcasting adventure. I know you guys love hearing from Britt, and I love chatting with her. So, Britt, welcome. Welcome. How's your day? We're rolling into the weekend. How much fun are you excited to have? You're feeling better. You were sick. You caught what everybody else has had,
Like
and I
everyone.
think you get a true weekend, right?
This weekend should be better than last weekend. Let's just say that. And it is gorgeous out here. So, I mean, I might have been slightly annoyed at the birds chirping, and I'm like, really? Like, waking me up? That's what you're going to be annoyed about? Get over it. It's a nice day outside.
Oh my gosh. Okay, Cinderella. I love that. I love that. It is like it's a we I keep thinking, gosh, it's like unseasonably warm. And like it's not. It's supposed to be 85 degrees next week, FYI. But this time of year, last year was cold. That was the abnormality. This
Yeah.
is actually normal for Phoenix. So I keep having to remind myself of that because it is warm. But the birds are chirping, the dogs are barking across the street. Like there's people walking by and they get angry. It's all here and we're here for it. And so if you hear the birds, you hear the cats, you hear the dogs, just know we are a company that fully encompasses the animals. We love them and they're here with us today. So I love it. Well, today's content I'm actually really excited about. I wanted to take like an excerpt from a practice that I've worked a ton with over the last few years. They are near and dear to my heart, some of my favorite human beings in the whole world. Trish was on a call with me with them, our consultant Trish, and she texted me on the side. She's like, he is the sweetest man. I'm like, he really, really is. They are just such a sweet human and individuals, but I've taken some journeys with them financially, um, and with a lot of their team members and doctors and stuff. And I wanted to kind of highlight a piece that we found
Mhm.
that I don't think I even like always thought about. And I think those are the spaces that I actually love about consulting is one, a challenge. I always love a challenge. Erin decided like we're doing a steps challenge and I'm like, I'm gonna win. Like I was already doing it, but now I'm like, I'm for sure doing it. So you challenge me and it's going to
Game
work.
on.
It is. It works every time. Ask Kira. She says it. She screams it from the mountaintops. Like it really does work. I don't know why. So I love a challenge. I love learning. And I really love when it's like, oh my gosh, that was so obscure from the normal. And it's so cool to see what we were able to create and figure out. And we all know at this point in the game that we need 98% collections across the board. And we all know it's not always that way. And doctors, I really wanted to bring you this information and this like story, right? Storytelling time. This story from something that I've witnessed, experienced, and worked through because I want you guys to be able to take some tools back to your own practices and implement some things that are actually are really easy that not everyone is always doing. So Britt, you're here with me for this journey. And I'm excited because it brings in some of those business pieces that I know we love chatting about. So we're going to chat through some of it, and then I want to bring in your brain on like how can we implement these things in every single practice. So biggest space walking in to this practice was their overhead. Like their overhead was out of control. And they were making massive production for a single doctor to hygiene. They're at like 140 to 160 consistently. And their hygiene department, through some like digging, right? I find their hygiene department is like 11 to 15% of their production. So this doctor is
Yeah.
exhausted. He is just like not able to sleep at night because he's stressed. He's working really hard. And their overhead is really high, like almost 80% when we started working together, almost 80% overhead, you guys. That's before paying him, that's before paying loans. And so they actually had to take loans out to pay bills and pay loans,
Mm.
like this giant cycle, right? This just upside down, stressed mess, and he could not figure it out because production wise, right, he should be okay. But Brett, his overhead's almost 80%, and his doing calculations, right, and I'm like collections is like all over the place. One month it's like 103%. One month it's 87%. Then it's like 92. And it's just like jumping all over the place. Like, what the heck is going on in this practice? Like the production is fairly consistent, right? But the collections is inconsistent and the overhead is consistently high. So I think from many people's standpoint, the number one thing you do, right? I had a doctor yesterday that I was talking to, and he's like, not as profitable as he wants to be. And I get it. And we can make him more profitable working on it. But he's like, okay, so I need to produce more. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. You can't always outproduce the problem, right? And this practice is like that to a T because they are producing really well, but their overhead's still really high. And their collections, again, like they're collecting something, but it's just all over the place. So we had to like really do some weird tricks in my opinion. I was just like, all right, we're gonna just dig in, we're gonna dive in, we're gonna figure some stuff out. So Britt, what we found, one, pre-collections, right? I love pre-collects, you guys. I love pre-collects. But what pre-collects will do is inflate your collections. And so, doctors, implement pre-collections, 100% implement pre-collections. But if you're going to when you implement pre-collections, you have to pre-collect every time, right? So what they were doing is they were pre-collecting on large cases. They were doing full mouth, like large cases inconsistently. So they'd have two $50,000 cases in a month pre-collect it's scheduled for next month, right? So they pre-collect for those two cases in January. They do the cases in February and they don't schedule any cases for March. So then, Britt, what happened to February? That we've got 103% collections over here in January, and then February is 87% because we did the production and we didn't pre-collect for new surgeries.
Your collections are ahead of your production because you're
Yes.
collecting ahead of time, a month ahead of time,
A
even.
month ahead of time. And they were so upside down financially that the pre-collects were being used to pay bills.
Mm.
And so they'd even pay down their loan that they got to pay bills. And then they'd have a low collections month and they'd have to use the loan, which I think personally, all of us have probably been in that situation in our personal lives at one point or another. And it's always interesting to me the parallels there because we like to think of business and personal finances so differently, but they are parallel, you guys. Money is money, business is business, life is life. But anyways, so then we figured out, okay, let's start pulling this money. So you pre-collect, you pull it, and you put it in a different bank account. So we started building their buckets, right? Their profit first style buckets without doing real profit first because we couldn't. So we're pulling
Planning
this
for it.
money, planning for it, right? We're prepping for profit first. So we've got these buckets and I've got them starting to pull for lab because they were he'd have like, honestly, sometimes it was like 20% lab bills. So we had to pull aside all this stuff and it was so fantastic to see the money moving in the right directions because it cleared things out of the way. And then we would like add it back in the month that we needed it, blah, blah, blah. So we were doing this like money moving. But the biggest piece of all, that was like, okay, you guys, level out your pre-collects. You're going to be fine. Make sure you move the money. Make sure you've got the lab bills, lab expenses covered in a different account. The biggest piece of all, Britt, that blew my mind, and the team found it on their own as we're moving this money around, they're like separating it on my KPI sheet I have for them. So I'm like, okay, this is your collections. This was your pre-collect. So this is your true collections. Your pre-collect where that's gone. That's for next month. That's next month's money. This is your true collections. Their true collections tanked. And they're like, well, Tiff, I'm seeing we're not actually collecting a lot over the counter. Like, well, that doesn't make any sense. What do you
Yeah.
mean you're not collecting? Like, so then collect, like get the money. And they said, well, everyone has credits on their accounts. They found it. So the previous billing manager and treatment coordinator and front office total wasn't putting information into the system correctly or at all, right? They didn't have the insurance fee schedules in there. So we had already worked through a lot of that, right? The fee schedules, the making sure all the insurance, the making sure what goes out was correct because it was incorrect. That had already been, we've been solving that. But what happened is she was guesstimating off of UCR, taking like 20% ish off of UCR for treatment plans and over collecting for patients. So then when insurance, which is great, I'd rather over collect than under collect
Uh-huh.
if you're going to pay attention to your credits
Yes.
and give credits back. We were not paying attention to the credits. And so, Britt, all of these patients, just like thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars in credits of patients who were coming in. We had the treatment, we had the production, but we had already had the collection. So this is where it's like, truth be told, you cannot outproduce your overhead, because if you produce and you've got $100,000 in collection or in credits, right? All of these patients are coming in for fillings and it's like a $56 copay. They've got $300 credit they're working away on their account. So the money's already been there. The money's already paid the bills. They had to then, on our KPI, I'm like, okay, well, we're going to do another column. Next column is like, how many patients, what was the amount of credits that you used today? So that if we had collected it, I need to see from a financial standpoint, I need to be able to see if we had collected it, would our overhead be okay? Is the overhead issue because we can't collect that money, or is it because we need to produce and collect more? So it was so hard to like see all of the pieces because there was so much chaos in the accounts that was so like hard to find. They did an incredible job keying into Tip, I think it's the credits. And I was like,
Yeah.
oh my gosh, you just blew my mind, right? Like
Yeah.
I didn't even think of this. I thought for sure the pre-collects, like let's level those out. Let's always pre-collect on everything. We changed that model, but that was only adding now to the credits. So it was like, holy cow. But it was really cool, Britt, to be able to see that's one layer that I think a lot of practices and a lot of practice owners forget to look at, right? We look at our AR, we look at our production, our collections, our new patients. We never really truly look at our credits. And these credits had our overhead at like 80%, and our collections was literally like 87 to 95 on a really like good month of no surgeries pre-scheduled. So it was wild to see. But then once we started accounting for that, it took about a year to really truly get through all of those credits or most of those credits that were coming in. So it took about a year, but being able to visually see on the overhead spreadsheets, on the KPIs, all of the money and where it was going, what it was allocated to, helped them to be able to see where they needed to move money to, pull money to, what needed to be done. He could project, like, how long do I have to work this hard? Because he's got to produce as much as he can to get through the credits plus get some collections in. So he truly had to just work his tail off for this year to really dial back some of those issues. But it was really fun to see, okay, these are all of the spaces that you've got to make sure you're paying attention to.
Mhm.
Especially because, Brett, I think we've all experienced this. I mean, I did in practice too. I'm like, oh, the billing rep has got it, right? So many owner doctors, like that's you want to be able to, and I'm not saying you can't trust,
Right.
right? But human error is a thing, and we don't always know what we don't know. And I think that this gal just didn't know how to do it any other way.
Yeah.
So she was doing it the best she could. And honestly, like more money, the better. So if you're gonna, I want you to collect more if that's an opportunity, but we have to be able to give it back. Like we have to be able to watch those. So I'd rather over collect than have to track somebody down for a bill, right? I totally agree
100%.
with that theory.
Agreed.
But if we're not watching it though, like it's wild. So Britt, from business standpoint, right? We've got all of these moving pieces. Like from a business standpoint, if this doctor or a doctor who might be in a similar situation, right? They're like nearing what they thought was going to be retirement, right? They thought they were getting there. Now their business is like spiraling. I mean, I did my digging. We did it. We got through it. It took a while. The next year, Like we've decreased their overhead by 10% in that year. The
Wow.
next year, we decreased it again almost another 10%. Like they're down to like 55 to 60% overhead. At this point, they're freaking swimming. They're doing fantastic. Their team is doing great. They're able to do great things with their team and with their family. So we did it, but from a business standpoint, we had to get a lot of help in there, a lot of CPA and
Mhm.
financial advisors and things. But from your perspective, Britt, just on the outside hearing that, what would you tackle or what would you tell a doctor, implement this right now so that you know if these things are happening? Like, how would a doctor, from your standpoint, and if you were, I'm the doctor and you're the consultant, like, what would you tell me to be watching and be prepped for so that I don't fall into a situation like that?
Yeah, and number one, I think this is like one a great scenario, Tiff. Like these are the things that consultants love puzzles. So like this is one of those that it's like there's something, I know it is, we're gonna find it, but we got to figure out what exactly is happening in a scenario. And this is, I think, one example of sometimes situations that doctors can find themselves in where it's like, okay, shoot, we figured something out, and yeah, that sucks. That's crappy,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And we lived the high life for a while, but we spent money that really wasn't ours there for a little while.
Yeah.
So now we've got to work through this in between period and get it fill the squeeze, because it's like, all right, we are now collecting the more accurate amount and we're using up these credits. So that is why our cash flow is
Hmm.
struggling big time right now. And so I think what I would tell doctors from that end is I think you've got to watch all the pieces and the real numbers. I think a lot of times, right, especially with credits, it's like it's like the like thing we don't talk about. It's like the
Yeah.
terrible awful that it's like, man, we're just gonna like we know it's over there, but we're just gonna kind of ignore that it exists unless someone asks about it, and then all
Yep.
right, we'll look at it. And the better way to do it to avoid pitfalls like this is of course watch it. Like there's always going to be some over there, yes, and have a process for handling your credits to where one credit should always be audited before we're refunding. Make sure it's actually due to that patient before we refund
Agreed.
it, because that's
Hmm.
also a scenario I've seen where it hits us on the cash flow side if we just refund and sometimes there's an error and it's not actually theirs. So I think watching your credits, having a process for how we handle credits for a couple of reasons, cash flow reasons, and also know the laws of your state. Like, fun surprise, if you don't know already, each state treasury has laws on credits and how those should be handled. So make yourself aware of those and then create your system to be in compliance with it. And with that, it's usually great by X date. Like if it's a credit higher than X amount, you have to like do your part to try to notify that patient. And then sometimes once it gets old enough, you've got to pay that to Treasury. Like fun fact, also go look up your name to see if you've got any credits sitting out there that are due back to you. And like that's the proper way to go through it. So have a system for it. And I think don't be afraid of refunds. Yes, we always want to try to schedule appointments, get treatment time, get them to use it. Like that is my
Yeah.
ultimate goal is get them to use it in the office. But if not, make sure you've got a process, because then it's more digestible amounts to refund
Hmm.
instead of like big amounts that hit you when they're surprises. Surprises aren't fun. So as much as we can avoid surprises, let's do it and have a process for it. Now, if you're in a scenario like this doctor was, where there's a lot of credits sitting out there, strategize how we can handle that, because we can't just
Hmm.
go refund $100,000 all at once. So
Hmm.
come up with a plan that's manageable that you can handle with your cash flow that you have to be able to work on getting that into a good place. And that's a lot of times with these things. It takes usually things take at least 6 months in a dental office, right? Things, big things
Hmm.
like this, it's usually at least 6 months to put a fix into play, if not a year. So know that sometimes when you find these things, all right, we start to put the fixes into play and then we start to clean up what's been there, and it can take a little bit of
Yeah, I agree. I love all that. I think I love the treasury comments. I totally go figure it out, guys.
time.
And most practices, I think on that note, will give like, well, I know for me when I was office manager of my practice, I had like a certain amount that was allocated every month for refunds. So I'd have 3,000 or 5,000 or whatever it was that was like, okay, this is what I have allocated that I can give back as refunds this month. And then next, if another one came in, it was like, cool, I'm going to hit it next week because it's next month or whatever that was. Like that'll go into next month. So make sure you do have that solid plan. And I love all of that. And make sure you're looking at it. I think that's the biggest piece here that Britt's highlighted. Just make sure you're pulling those. So I think production collections, new patients, like those are making sure we're thriving. Your active patient count, we talk about those all the time. Those are the ones that like, yes, let's make sure we're thriving. Our AR, our insurance AR and our patient AR, so it's outstanding money, but that AR can get super skewed, you guys, if you've got money sitting over in credits because your AR total, usually, unless you click the little button that says not including credits, will deduct the credits from the total. So your AR might say like our total AR is $68,000 and you're like, I'm freaking killing it, right? And you could be, and that's totally fair. But make sure it's not deducting $50,000 of credits sitting over there that need to be addressed as well. So
Which is a
I
good
want you,
point, Tiff, I think, on knowing how your system does things.
yeah.
'Cause even, right, and that's why sometimes it's not as easy to see. I've even seen some where it's allocation issues, right?
Mhm.
And skew things a little bit as well. So, yeah, good point on knowing how your system accounts for things.
Yep. Yeah, I've done it myself, like not clicked that little button and been like, "Whoo, we're good this month." And then I'm like, "Wait, where are all these credits coming in from?" As a manager, these are all things that I had to learn because again, you guys, unless you have a professional by your side, there's not a really great like go to school to be a dental, professional, like dentistry, dentists, hygienists, dental assisting schools. I'll add those in there. Like haphazardly adding those in there, right? There's not a place for the front office really unless you have a coach or a consultant or someone who is able to train them on the things that we've learned across the board, across learning all of the things. There's business classes that a lot of us have taken. Britt's got freaking so many beautiful degrees behind her name. Like there's so much that can come from that, but there's so much that can be missed because we're literally just learning from the person who is in front of us or teaching ourselves. So just make sure you know your stuff, you know how your system works, you know what your numbers mean. And if you have any doubts or suspicions, or you're just like, gosh, I just want to make sure we're doing the best that we can, reach out. You guys, we're here for it, whether you're a future client or you're like, I just need free information. Like, you guys, we built this company on serving the dental community in the best ways we possibly can, and we will stay true to that. So reach out. Any questions you have, hello@thedentalyteam.com. I'm going to put this caveat in there. I'm not like, we're not super pros at your dental software, but we can help you find the information and we can tell you what you should be looking for and what the stats should be. So reach out, you guys. Number one piece of information today, your number one to do, go figure out what your actual numbers are and figure out how your system is reporting them. Add them into your conversations with your office manager, your KPI reports, making sure that you're looking at those monthly. Okay. Britt, thank you so much for taking this journey with me today. I love I I love this. I told you like every time I'm like, okay, I'm gearing up. We're gonna figure this out. And it's just so much fun. I have so much fun with all of Dental Team's clients in general. We have some of the most amazing people who partner up with us and team up with us. But I am partial to my clients. I do. I have some incredible people that I get to talk to every single day. So thank you for taking the journey with me. Hello@thedentalyteam.com, you guys, for any information, thedentalyteam.com. There's all kinds of stuff on there. There's all kinds of free resources. And you guys, we do these fun practice assessments where we really help dial in on areas that you should be focused in on. These are free information. It's a free, I think, hour with our team. So I don't know why you wouldn't sign up for that. If you're a client, you guys just text your consultant. I promise you they'll hop on a call. So that's that. Leave us a 5-star review. We can't wait to hear how much value you took from today's conversation. Britt, thank you so much for giving me your time today. It means a lot to me. And everyone, we'll catch you next time.